All right. Actually, I do want to play in this because this does exemplify it. You point out this in your article. Let's play this Rand Paul clip because this Ron Paul, this is actually Ron, right? This is from back in the day. This really exemplifies what you're talking about. And this is actually so perfect because Ron Paul, I mean, Rand Paul just is dumb and he's just an asshole. Ron Paul certainly is an asshole. But especially back when there was nobody in frontline politics practically that would ever criticize a U.S. war. He sort of developed a reputation of being like an honorable crackpot. I could never like the guy for a variety of reasons, not least of which that, absolutely bigoted, ridiculous newsletter and the racist conspiracy theories, but also because of shit like this.
Let me ask you this hypothetical question. A healthy 30-year-old young man has a good job, makes a good living, but decides, you know what? I'm not going to spend $200 or $300 a month for health insurance because I'm healthy. I don't need it. But, something terrible happens. All of a sudden, he needs it. Who's going to pay for it if he goes into a coma, for example? Who pays for that?
In a society that you accept welfareism and socialism, he expects the government to take care of it.
What do you want?
But what he should do is whatever he wants to do and assume responsibility for himself. My advice to him would have a major medical policy, but not because.
But he doesn't have that. He doesn't have it, and he needs intensive care for 6 months. Who pays?
That's what freedom is all about: taking your own risk. This whole idea that you have to prepare and take care of everybody.
But Congressman, are you saying the society should just let him die?
No. I practiced medicine before we had Medicaid in the early 1960s when I got out of medical school. I practiced at Santa Rosa Hospital in San Antonio, and the churches took care of them. We never turned anybody away from the hospital, and we've given up on this whole concept that we might take care of ourselves and assume responsibility for ourselves, our neighbors, our friends, our churches would do it. This whole idea, that's the reason the cost is so high. The cost is so high because a dump it on the government becomes.
Oh man!
Wow.
Yeah. Which, by the way, it's not the point that we're making here, but let's pause to note that the audiences at Republican debates are made up of just some of the best human beings. Just
really nice people.
Honestly.
That I remember actually. A different Ron Paul debate moment from back then when he said that we should apply the golden rule to foreign policy and not do to other countries what we wouldn't want done to him, to us. And the Republican debate audience booed that, right?
Boo.
But they'll cheer for
that. Let
the 30-year-old worker who doesn't have health insurance die.
Yeah, I like that. It's like, all right, well, wait a second. How about this? What if we let some kid die because he didn't have a health insurance policy? So,
Jesus.
Give you a little bit of applause. Guy's a little bit of a fucking lunatic with the whole not melting foreigners' bodies with phosphorus, but at least he thinks we should send people back to the Catholic charities.
That became the Republican standard though, because I remember when Trump running, it became became newsworthy when he's like, yeah, we're not just going to let people die on the street. It's like, Republican says we won't let people die on the street.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what he's laying out, right? What I say in the Jacobin article is that we've kind of been living in Ron Paul's dream, for the last 10 years. The GoFundMe has become such an increasingly big supplier of medical needs. And we've really seen how it works out, right? And this is even like the charitable construal of Paul, because if you take what Paul actually says in the clip, it's even one level more insane than that, because what he's saying is that neighborhoods, friends, churches, right, are going to take care of people, which is all stuff, all of those things that he's talking about are the sort of obviously always very inadequate, right? But those are the sort of institutions you get in just a completely different kind of society than the one we live in, right? Where everybody's goes to a neighborhood church where everybody knows their name, and all that stuff, right? Well,
also, what happens when the economy is, I mean, in general, this is ridiculous. And we already see the effects of having anemic at best social safety net in this country, and all the premature deaths that we have from people who don't have health care, and all of the absolutely easily preventable human suffering that is created because we don't have a government infrastructure. But what about in the context of a Great Depression and a pandemic where, maybe even people that are in a different situation would have been happy to help their neighbors, and as single individuals try to step inside and put a stopgap for not having a modern society, it's going to be harder for them to do, more likely than not, because maybe they have other members of their families they have to take care of. Maybe all of a sudden they're in financial jeopardy themselves. I mean,
no question.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So, right. One, it assumes that your friends and neighbors and fellow congregants at the church are themselves not struggling, right? If everybody's struggling at once, obviously it breaks down even in that much less atomized, much less diverse society that he's describing. It's a level more insane in the society we lived in even before the current crisis, because obviously, those kinds of communal institutions, are not what they once were, for both good reasons and bad reasons. And so, but at least GoFundMe, okay, it's one, it's not as crazy as what he's talking about, because this doesn't rely on these kind of face-to-face organic institutions in quite the same way. But what we have seen is that even having that high-tech version of the church collection plate, one, it has a lot of the same problems as the literal church collection plate, which is to say that even if every single person who asked for money that way got it, right? That like every single person who did a GoFundMe for their rent, made their rent, every single person did GoFundMe for their cancer treatment, got all their medical bills paid. It would still be wrong in principle. It's because it's incredibly degrading to require that people sacrifice their privacy and throw themselves on the mercy of strangers and hope that their particular, their photo is photogenic enough, that their particular story is captivating enough that it can go viral. If you read GoFundMe's guidelines for, how to create a viral post, this is all the stuff they emphasize. And of course, the more common a problem is, the less likely this is to be effective, because, you yet another person, that's like the 1,000th GoFundMe cancer story. Boring, right?
Right. Exactly. I don't need to hear about all this. I was big on helping people with leukemia last month.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And like in this context, it's so much crazier. It's like if we were all living in an island that was about to be destroyed by a volcano. They said, we were going to do like 1,000 competing individual fundraisers jostling for attention to pay for like the boats to evacuate in.
Right. And also the way, and again, also the other, like, what kind of social networks are you tapped into? What are the different, where, because again, you could be, if you're in a class position where you don't have access even more broadly to capital, that's a whole other thing. Then the whole other question of racial, religious, gender biases come in. I mean, it just, and coupled with a guy like Ron Paul, who basically barely wants any government anyways. So therefore, only wants to kind of legislate against discrimination in the public realm, but doesn't want there really to be any public realm. Mm-hmm. We're in postmodern feudalism, and again, I just want to underscore, David, throw to you in a sec, that the reason that this is so important is the extent to which he's just like a funhouse version of what is mostly the consensus. I mean, the new Democratic bailout package has COBRA subsidies. I mean, most people in the situation of just losing their jobs right now, they can't access COBRA. COBRA has nothing to do with the problems they're facing. I mean, the best, of course, is Medicaid access or Medicare access, but We're not even talking about opening up the ACA for people, which is bad enough. So this stuff is deep in the bloodstream of, he's just the logic of the dominant tendencies in all modern politics. So if you think he's nuts, then you should turn around and ask why, Mitch McConnell and why Nancy Pelosi are also, frankly, pretty nuts in different ways. David.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that like libertarians should be careful if they make survival contingent on being members of a popular social group.
It's also something that they should definitely be a little bit more attentive to. Well, there you have it, folks.
Drill sergeant says in Full Metal Jacket they make two kinds of men in Texas: Ron Pauls and Dave Griscoms.
I love it.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.